organizer, Dr.Binod Singh, Director, BRICS Institute India, to offer a warm welcome to our panelist. Dr. Binod?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good afternoon, good evening, namaste, salaam alaikum, ni hao, and drasviche. I have to use all these greetings because India is no more just watching. It's not just we are watching this forum or our TV, the whole world is watching us, the way India is rising. So we choose this topic, India and West Asia, I think 2 or 3 weeks back. We never thought that the situation will become so toxic that we have to invite our patron, our guardian, Honorable VC sir, to come and control the situation at the Mysore Global Forum. So, sir, at the very outset, we are very feeling bold, confident that we are able to invite you back to the campus on behalf of the University of Mysore IR department. And so what we are going today is just a reflection of what India is emerging in the global map. And we have a very sensitive topic today, which I'm not qualified to talk much. And that's why we were again lucky enough that our department has been guided by Professor A.K.Pasha, who has been a veteran not only in that part of India, but again in JNU and the whole Middle East. In fact, we have been born and brought up under his guidance. So again, we are not qualified to speak too much in front of him. But again, like what's happening right now is not economic crisis, not a political crisis, it's a diplomatic crisis. MEA's diplomatic war room is very active to control the fire in the Middle East. This is the first time, I think, after 1990s that India has become such a controversial issue in the whole Middle East. I was advised by my colleague, Madam Bharati and others, not to bring this topic to discuss today. What the topic I'm referring is the controversy right now about India and India's some of the spokesperson of the ruling party giving some statement, which is seen by the people and the friends in the Middle East or the West Asia, as we have crossed the Lakshman Rekha in our own language. But sir, at the same time, we also believe in India as a vibrant and functional democracy, that a healthy debate is always required. In Hindi, sometimes we say, "Ek haath se tali nahi bajti." So at this forum, I think we are open to discuss certain aspects of how the things went out of control and how we can control the fire now. And for this purpose, we have invited one of the India's most experienced and veteran diplomatic scholar who has served across the globe and who speaks the languages in different countries, especially Russian, who is also a kind of fellow JNUite from Jawaharlal Nehru University, just like Honorable Professor Pasha. His name is none other than Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. And before coming to this forum, sir, I really saw some of his videos where he's trying to pacify the fire, to cool down the atmosphere, the damage we have done by speaking too much, little bit, overconfident, about the rise of India. India has been a very peaceful power in Asia, in the world. We have been looking east and west equally, and we have been the most respectful to all the religions in the world. But sir, today, there's a new India emerging. There's a powerful India. We call it India emerging as a major power, no doubt, in different fields, sir. But again, at the same time, we need your guidance, your wisdom to guide us so that we don't get out of control. And that's why today's topic, although it is titled India's Energy Security in the West Asia, but we cannot avoid the hiding part is that people-to-people contact is very important. Despite we are doing business in petrodollars and oil, but people-to-people contact between India and West Asia is so important that more than 8 million Indians are right now based in Arab world. So one statement which has gone wrong from our side can, put them in danger. So we should always keep in mind that, for a long time in the independent India, Arab world, West Asia has been a very balancing player. And the kind of relationship we shared with them for the last 5,000 years, where it's Arabic number, which they took it to the world, and now they call it Arabic number, but it was invented by India. So like this, they have been the middleman in the East and West. They have taken Indian culture to the West, and they have brought Western culture to India. It's very hard to distinguish where is the Arabic culture, where is the Indian culture? In our sweets, in our clothing, in our Bollywood movies. And even, sir, I believe you can guide us in science and technology also. There's a lot we have learned from each other, and we have peacefully coexisted. Whether it was Gulf War, Iraq War, or whether it is latest Russian and Ukraine war, I think India has always promoted peace and diplomacy and dialogue in all the countries. We have never chosen a side, whether it is Western Bank and Gaza conflict, one of the longest living conflict in the world. We have not sided in the Shia-Sunni conflict. We have maintained very balanced and equal people-to-people and cultural relationship with all the Gulf, these West Asian countries. And people like Prof.A.K.Pasha and diplomat like Ambassador Anil, they have worked very hard. And right now they feel angry what we are doing. So at this forum, we want them to guide us how things can be controlled, how it should not be exaggerated. And at the same time, I have to make some disclaimers that any opinion made on this platform today, it has to be individual. It will not represent the idea of or thinking of Mysore Global Forum. Mysore Global Forum is purely an academic forum meant for the students and faculty of IR department, which is a young department, sir, for the last 5-6 years, approved by you when you were the Vice Chancellor and guided by Professor A.K.Pasha, who was the board of the member. We were lucky to contact Ambassador Anil Trigunayat because he is very humble, he is very humanitarian, he has been guiding our MEA, in rescue operations in many parts of the world. And again, right now, although he is not directly serving in the MEA, but the way he is active with his philosophy, with his approach towards how India should handle the current situation, in a very dilemma that we have certain questions with the radical Islam, with the terrorism, the way they have been funded by some of the regimes, which I cannot name here. But at the same time, we have to walk the tightrope here. So without further delay, I'll just repeat once again that this forum is meant to create peace and amity and harmony between the civilizations and culture. We are not a political forum or some wing of some party. So before I hand over the session to Honorable Moderator, Professor Bharati Hiremath, who has taken a big courage to choose this topic, approve this topic, and sir, invite you to bless us, to guide us that how Mysore, as a very historical place in India, as a place of science and technology, as a place of India's culture, can play an important role in India's rise, in the rise of India. I take your permission, I take break here, and I really apologize if I have made any extra statement on any topic. So madam, the floor is yours. And I'm sorry that I couldn't name all the individuals because my colleagues at the University of Mysore, they have prepared a very good, well-prepared welcome remarks, which will follow next. So thank you very much for your precious time. And we look forward for a great interaction today from Ambassador Anil Trigunayat and also Professor A.K.Pasha and Professor Gowda also. So we are all students of yours, and we look forward to see a new idea, a new India, a new diplomacy, whether it is East or West. We all want to go for the same foreign policy, peaceful foreign diplomacy. So thank you very much, ma'am. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Binod. We all know that India's 2/3 oil imports relies on GCC countries. Recently, Indian government has taken a challenging decision to expand its renewable energy to 500 gigawatt by 2030. Also, India has taken many programs to implement and to promote oil resources in India. In this regard, India is continuously trying to make itself self-reliant in coming days. In this regard, today we have outstanding practitioners and dynamic academicians and dynamic personalities to discuss on India's energy security and West Asia. Sir, we have a formal procedure to introduce our guests and panelists. Now, I request Ms. Renuka Hiremath to introduce our former Vice Chancellor, Professor K.S.Rangappa and Dr. Appaji Gowda on the behalf of BRICS Institute India and the Department of International Relations. Ms. Renu, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Renuka Hiremath. Sir, I'm really blessed today to introduce an outstanding personality like you. And indeed, it is difficult for me to put all your achievements in limited slot, but I'll try my best, sir. Respected Professor K.S.Rangappa, sir, has been Vice Chancellor for 2 universities, Karnataka State Open University and University of Mysore, Mysuru. Sir has made novel and significant contributions to chemical biology, drug discovery program, bioorganic and medicinal chemistry. His most important contributions have been towards the synthesis of new molecules for various therapeutic areas. Over 5,000 new bioactive molecules have been synthesized from his laboratory, which was tested for their antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, anti-malarial, and against Alzheimer's disease. Apart from research activities, Sir has developed several Indo-Japan, Indo-French, Indo-UK, Indo-US, Indo-Russia, and many more collaborative research programs with more than 300 scientists working across the globe. Sir is the Fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry, UK, Fellow of National Academy of Sciences, and Fellow of Indian Science Congress Association. He has received many awards and is visiting professor in several universities abroad. Professor Rangappa has 11 patents and has successfully guided 55 PhD candidates. He has been appointed as Chief Scientific Advisor at Sinotar Pharmaceutical Company Limited. He is the General President for 107th Indian Science Congress. His perseverance and hard work inspires many. Sir, you are a living inspiration to many of us. Once again, a warm welcome to you. I extend my welcome to respected Dr. Appaji Gowda, sir. He has been Chairman of Board of Studies in Department of Anthropology, KSOU. He has also been member of Board of Studies in Department of International Relations, Department of Sociology, and many more. Sir is life member at Indian Science Congress Association. His area of interest is tribal development, and his field of research is lifestyle of people around KRS Dam due to Kaveri River water reservoir. His pioneering spirit and willingness is an inspiration to many of us. We are privileged to have you here with us, sir. I welcome you both to the panel discussion. Thank you for gracing Mysore Global Forum. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Renuka, for giving a wonderful introduction of our today's guest. Now I request Professor K.S.Rangappa, former Vice Chancellor of University of Mysore and Karnataka State Open University. Sir, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone, particularly Ambassador Anil, former Ambassador of India to Libya, and distinguished fellow of Vivekananda International Foundation. And good old friend, Professor A.K.Pasha, Director and Chairman of SIS JNU, and very young and bright Dr.Binod Singh, who is the Director of BRICS Institute, India, Dr.Bharati, Hiremath, Dr.Appaji Gowda, and many participants of this Mysore Global Forum organized this seminar on India's energy, security, and West Asia. At the outset, I'm extremely happy to be associated with this Mysore Global Forum, which is a new forum which can somebody should support, including myself, to come up. As the director Binod Singh mentioned, the BRICS Institute is collaborating with this Mysore Global Forum is a very encouraging matter. Now, I'm extremely happy. I've been associating with this Mysore Global Forum for the last several months. You know, India is setting up a web of energy relationships in the extended neighborhood, covering Myanmar, Vietnam in the east, with Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan and Gulf countries in the west. Major transformations are underway in global energy sector, from growing electrification to the expansion of renewable energy upheaval in oil production and globalization of natural gas markets. India needs to build its capacity in research and skills building to deal with these transformations in energy sector. Challenges like carbon emissions, air pollution, and energy access outlines different possible future scenario for the energy security. The dynamic scenarios foreseen by India Energy Security Scenarios 2047 should guide the policymakers in the energy sector. India needs to ensure long-term planning to ensure universal energy access and meeting its commitment under Paris Agreement to ensure sustainable and inclusive growth. The post-independence India has strategic interests in West Asia. The Gulf states supply the bulk of India's oil and natural gas, host large diasporas, promote trade and investment, and engage in security and intelligence cooperation. For decades, the relationship between India and the Gulf has been defined by oil. However, for firmer influence, the country is ready to its interests in West Asia beyond oil and gas. India imports 53% of its oil and 41% of its gas from West Asia, and over 8.5 million Indians work in the region. Energy trade is the anchor of India-West Asia economic relations, but the trade basket needs to be diversified, especially due to the Wuhan virus and the fall in energy demands. Goods like precious metals, food, agriculture products, chemicals, gems, and jewelry, textile must all be included in the trade basket. A senior official from India's Ministry of External Affairs said India and the Gulf can explore furthering of partnerships to develop oil and gas reserves in various parts of the country. India is expanding cooperation and has agreed to further strengthen Bahrain, India ties in the areas of defense and maritime security, space technology, trade and investment, infrastructure, aid, tech, health, hydrocarbon and renewable energy. Although India has tried to maintain a relatively neutral stance in West Asia, connectivity with West Asia is strategically important for India to remain stable in terms of its energy consumption and security. And I'm sure today the esteemed panel will discuss India's energy security with West Asia. Hopefully, we can have an effective and insightful discussion which might bring forth the key frames of India in maintaining the strong relations with West Asia in terms of energy security. With these, I take the opportunity to congratulate all of you to organize this kind of activity, the India's energy security in West Asia, which everyone requires and needs. With these, I wish you all the success for this one-day meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your good words and valuable opening remarks for today's panel discussion. Now, I request our student, Ms. Pinal, to introduce our dynamic and outstanding practitioner, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat and Professor A.K.Pasha.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I am Pinal Trivedi and I am a student of the Department of International Relations. Good evening to one and all present here. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who is going to talk on the topic India's energy security and West Asia. Our speaker, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat sir, is a member of the Indian Foreign Service. He has served in the Indian missions in Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, Mongolia, USA, Russia, Sweden, Nigeria, Libya, and Jordan. He also served as Director General, Joint Secretary for the Gulf and Hajj divisions in the Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi. Thereafter, Ambassador Trigunayat worked as Deputy Chief of Mission in the rank of Ambassador in the Embassy of India, Moscow. Prior to his superannuation in May 2016, he served as Ambassador of India to Jordan and Libya and High Commissioner to Malta. He is a postgraduate in physics from the Agra Kumaon University and also studied Russian history, culture, and language at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He is a member of the All India Management Association, Delhi Management Association, as well as that of Oxford and Cambridge Society of India and the Association of Indian Diplomats for former ambassadors. He is the honorary member of the International Trade Council, Brussels. He is also the honorary advisor to BRICS Chamber of Commerce. Ambassador Trigunayat sir is profound and fluent in French, Russian, and Spanish languages. He is a peace ambassador with Unity Earth, Australia, as well as a Rotarian serving the society to the extent possible. Finally, I would like to say, sir, it's my great honor to welcome you as an eminent person who has experienced a lot from all walks of life and have come here to guide us. So on behalf of our department and one and all present here, I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir. Also, I would like to introduce our second speaker today, Professor A.K.Pasha. He is a former Associate Dean of School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Sir has been teaching at university level since 1984 and has over 15 years administrative experience as Associate Dean, Director, and Chairman in the university. He has also served as diplomat in Egypt for 3 years. He holds MA degrees in Middle Eastern Studies and Political Science from Mysore University, MPhil and PhD in International Studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has published over 26 books self-authored, edited, and co-edited. He has published over 100 research articles in academic journals as well. He has successfully supervised over 50 MPhil and PhD dissertation and theses. His research, teaching, and writing is focused on West Asia and North Africa. He is on the editorial board of several international and national journals. He is a frequent commentator, analyst on international affair issues for radio and TV in India and abroad. He was Fulbright Professor Scholar at St. Cloud State University, Minnesota, USA during 2010. He has been visiting professor at several universities in India. His research interests and area of specialization include democratization in West Asia and North Africa political spheres, Arab-Israeli peace process, comparative regionalism and linkages between West Asia and North Africa. His most recent books are India and the Gulf Region, Maritime History, Trade, Security, and Political Reforms. Currently, Sir is serving as the Director of Center for India-West Asia Dialogue, CIWAD. Finally, I would like to say that it's my honor to welcome you, sir, as well. So on behalf of our department and one and all, I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Meena.
Thank you, ma'am.
For your beautiful introduction of our today's panelist. Sir, it is not enough to talk about your personalities. Without taking much, I would like to say little about our panel discussion. In the era of increasing trade war and changing global order, it is very important in India to balance the relations with West Asian countries. And it is very important to increase, to have an, it should ensure energy security. And also it is very important to know that what is the quest for energy security and how India can balance the relations with West Asian countries. It may be a bilateral relation, it may be a multilateral relation, because in the era of this, competition, we need to have a balancing relations with West Asian countries. Sir, without taking much time, I will leave the platform to you people, sir. And it is a very honor to us and our students to listen your views and informations, your experience in this field, sir. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir. Ambassador Anil, sir.
Thank you, Professor Hiremath, and thank you, Mr. Trivedi, for that very kind introduction. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Rangappa, Professor Gowda, Dr. Binod Singh of the BRICS Institute, Mysore Global Forum. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be able to discuss with you certain dimensions of our relationship with West Asia, especially in the company of my very dear friend, Prof.Pasha. You are all aware about the recent controversy that erupted between India and West Asian countries, especially from the Gulf region. It was an unnecessary controversy, but that shows that sometimes certain innocuous events can impact a perception in a particular relationship. But the fact that it has been duly addressed as a result of the government's continued, I would say, perseverance in maintaining excellent relations with the Middle East. And as you rightly mentioned, Professor, it is a relationship not of yesterday or today or tomorrow. It is a relationship which is connected through civilizations. Many of you may know that Oman used to have played a very key role in India going to Europe and to elsewhere. We have historic civilization, whether it is Dilmun civilization in Bahrain. So the relationship at the P2P level, that is people to people level, have always been there. If you are going to meet many of the leaders in these regions, they will very fondly recall their connection with India before the oil was strong. Once they became oil rich, obviously it became a much greater field for geopolitical contestation. Earlier it was the British, and then the Americans replaced them, and then they came into the Cold War scenario. Finally, in the recent past, and especially after the 1973, when we had the Yom Kippur War, that was the time that these countries learned how to use oil as their weapon. So when today we are talking of Russia using oil as its weapon against the European and American interests, we need to see that this is not something that is unique today. But this has gone on. At the same time, this region, as you know, possesses more than 40% of the hydrocarbon energy in the world. So it is extremely important. Whatever we may be doing today to substitute the hydrocarbons with the renewables, and as you mentioned earlier, India has set great targets, and it's absolutely necessary to do so also. But at the same time, I do not think that within the next 30, 40 years, we are likely to wean away from the hydrocarbons. Because if we have to grow at 8 to 10% in order to meet our targets and the aspirations of our youth, we will have to continue to use energy, because without the energy, you cannot just move forward, whichever way we look at it. But a lot of this energy would be converted into renewables. That is for sure, that's going to be there. And it's not only us. If you follow the region, you will realize that these countries themselves have started branching out towards the renewable domain. And it is not only India which is doing it. India is doing it because 85% of our requirements we import from outside. And majority of it is now coming from the West Asian countries. And in fact, over the time that we have seen several incidents that have happened and had impacted us a great deal. Because as you know, the majority of our imports are actually constitute mainly of the oil and gas. And therefore, it is important that we continue to export at the same time in order to offset the foreign exchange requirements. So oil is also a fungible commodity. It is not going to last forever. As we know that the Saudi Arabia, if it continues to pump at today's rate of 10.2 million barrels a day, it will have the oil for a maximum of 80 years. So that's the time frame that we are looking at it, and it is the richest country in terms of oil. Some new finds may be there, but that's not there. We have seen what has happened. The Americans, because see, the geopolitics of oil has also changed a great deal. Earlier, the Americans were greatly dependent on the Middle East oil, but over time, they have become not only self-sufficient, but have also emerged as exporters of oil. And they are competing with the Middle East countries, even with India and elsewhere. So very often you will find that the Americans trying to cut into the same pie. But at the same time, their European allies or Asian allies, for example, Japan and South Korea, are also quite dependent on the Middle East oil supplies. So they have to keep on looking after their own interests in that sense. But we have seen that whenever there have been disruptions, whether in the region or outside, oil has been impacted. Supply of oil has been impacted. The price of oil has been impacted. You remember that I spoke about 73. Thereafter, we had the Iran-Iraq war. Then we had the Gulf Wars. Thereafter, we had the Arab Spring, even during that time. Then when you had the financial meltdown, and thereafter, you have now the Russia-Ukraine crisis, which has impacted. Now, for your information, in the last 3-4 months, we have paid more than $40 billion out of our foreign exchange reserves to buy the additional oil that we require because of the cost increases. So you can imagine if the oil prices go haywire, we are going to have a problem in our developmental paradigm, the growth of the economy. Only 2 days ago, the World Bank has brought down India's GDP forecast for next year to about 7.5% from 8.5%. So these are the things that are going to keep putting you at any given time in a very challenging position. So I feel that we need to have something, as we have embarked on, is called Atmanirbhar. Now, Atmanirbhar, how does it become? That becomes through diversification, because if we are going to be part of the global and value supply chains, you can't live in an island. So you have to create your own capacities and competitiveness. At the same time, finding those partnerships which are reliable and dependable. Today, fortunately, our relations with all the Gulf countries and the Middle Eastern countries have been excellent, I would say. This is earlier it used to be a transactional relationship, as we used to call it. For example, you buy the oil, you pay for it. You had the Indians working there, they will be sending their remittances, their employees. But it has changed over time. And as was mentioned earlier, it has gone into the defense and the strategic area. And it is not only for our own interest, it is for their interest as well. Because India has turned into the largest market in the world, it's going to be. And even today, it is the second largest market. There is a better rate of return from their investments. So they're investing. As we are talking, there is a greater investment coming into from Saudi Arabia, from UAE, from Qatar, from Kuwait, from Bahrain, from all these countries into the oil and gas sectors and other areas of our investment. So what does this investment do? This investment creates the stakeholdership of their interest into India. And I would say that this has played out extremely well. How? Our relationship few years ago, let's say about 10 years back, is still predicated on their relationship with Pakistan. Every time something happened, they said they are very close to Pakistan because of Islam, because of this, that, all kinds of shit. This has changed. These key countries thought that Article 370 abrogation, or for that matter, the Balakot and Pulwama strikes and all those, they were all part of India's internal response system and responsibility. This was never to be done before. It never happened before. Every time all these used to get up. They also do not comment on your internal matters unless a situation like the last week or 10 days ago happens. It has not happened, but they understood India's position. And so I see that our relationship with these countries is extremely important. And I also continue to maintain that in some ways, our extended neighborhood comprising of Gulf countries in the Middle East is even more important than your immediate neighborhood for your energy security, for your food security, for your fertilizer security, for your diaspora security, for your remittances. The remittances coming from the Gulf constitute nearly 10% of your overall foreign exchange at this stage. It's extremely important for us. So whatever we do here in our country, we need to be mindful of the impact it will have on our relationship there. The maritime security, the maritime lanes are so very important for trade, for flow of oil and gas and everything. And there is going to be a competition in there. China is going to be our biggest challenge in the region. They're already spreading around quite a bit. And so we'll have to continue to work together. We have to find. Now what we have done, we have diversified our, we import oil and gas from 41 countries, not from Africa, from Latin America. But the key problem that we face today is the unilateralism of the United States. They come up with some sanctions that is called CAATSA, which are secondary sanctions. We used to import nearly 21% of our oil from Iran and Venezuela. We had to bring it down to zero because of those US sanctions. Now you can imagine if you are going to cut off your nearly 1/4 of your supplies from certain countries because of a third country's actions, how are you going to move forward? Where do you replace the oil from? So that's the kind of challenges that one faces. So we have started now creating reserves in India. And in that, the UAE, the Saudi Arabia, the Qatar, all these countries are investing a great deal. Today, we have been able to, whatever I understood is that we have something about 35 days worth of reserves, which at one time, that President Biden asked all the countries to release the reserves. Just in 2 minutes, I'll take on our Russia thing. Now, the basic purpose of the foreign policy is to serve your own national interest. First and primary task is that for the foreign policy. So if I can buy oil from somewhere, be it Russia or elsewhere, at a much cheaper price, why would I be denied that? And that's precisely the reason that despite the objections of the Americans and the Western countries who deal only in hypocrisy, they're buying themselves, but at the same time, they deny you that right, even to buy a very small percentage. But what India has done, I just read somewhere that RIL, the Reliance Petroleum, have imported nearly 15 million barrels from Russia. Russia is giving you a huge discount. So when the prices are above $105, $110, another country gives you 30% discount, only a fool will not buy. So that's what is important. While it is your staple diet, frankly, for your industry. So therefore, what I say is that India's strategic autonomy, as the foreign policy today is called, is very much into play, into an action. And when we talk from the position of strength, when we talk from the position of principles, then we hold out in the world in that sense. So I'll be very happy to answer any questions, but I'll stop there because my friend, Professor Pasha, will be throwing greater light on many other things. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir. Consider Anil, sir, for your valuable and thought-provoking views on India's relations with West countries. And truly, as you told, for India, it is very much important to balance a very good relations with West Asian countries rather than neighborhood countries, because India is required to have a sustainable energy. Without taking much time, we need another outstanding personalities, highly experienced in West Asian countries. Sir, Professor Pasha, sir, over to you, sir. We want to listen to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hiremath, for this opportunity. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we are hearing you, sir.
Okay. Yes. Yes, let me make a few remarks in this context after Ambassador Anil has highlighted some of the key issues concerning India's energy security. You see, the world produces something like 100 million barrels of crude oil per day, and almost 28 to 30 million barrels of oil comes from OPEC plus countries in this region of West Asia and North Africa. And the most important consumer, of course, has been the United States, which burns nearly 18 to 20 million barrels of oil every 24 hours. We are somewhere around fourth or fifth after China, European Union, and other major players. And this oil has been a major factor in the West Asian region. Out of the 25 countries in this region, almost 15 countries have major oil or gas reserves located in their sands, from Iran, Iraq, the GCC countries of Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Oman. Plus, you have Libya, Algeria, Sudan, and Egypt and Israel also have gas, along with some oil deposits from Syria and Yemen. So put together, something like 15 countries in West Asia and North Africa are producing oil and gas, which is largely exported. And we import, as has been pointed out, bulk of our requirements from this region and beyond. And why West Asia is important for our energy security is because of 2-3 factors. One is it is the nearest point from where we can import oil and gas. The distance between India and the GCC countries of the Gulf region is the nearest, where bulk of the oil resources, gas resources are located. And these resources, crude oil and gas, have to be transported or tankers. And transporting involves cost. The further you are from the source, the greater is the cost. So the cost-wise also, it is cheaper for us to import from the GCC countries and Iran and Iraq. The third one is when you transport oil and gas in tankers, you have to pay insurance. So the insurance cost also is important when the actual price of energy is calculated. So insurance cost also would be much less compared to the farther areas from Nigeria, the United States, or the Siberian area of Vladivostok for Russia. So the transport cost, the insurance cost, all of these are calculated in the actual price or preference of the countries why we import bulk of our energy from the Gulf region. Also, as I said, this Gulf region has huge resources. 2/3 of the world's oil and gas is located in the Gulf region. So we need to procure from secure sources. We need long-term arrangements for import of energy because of our dependence, growing dependence on energy. So we have signed long-term agreements with Iraq, with Saudi Arabia, with Kuwait, with UAE, and other countries, Qatar, for example. So these long-term agreements on our energy requirement, both oil and gas, are important for stability because any disruption in the supply of oil or gas would disrupt our transport, our developmental efforts, so on and so forth. So we need to have long-term agreements for the import of energy and from secure sources. So in that way, even though India is dependent on the Gulf countries or the West Asian countries, they are also important sellers. They are interested in finding secure buyers. So India is an important buyer for oil, like China has been, or earlier the United States. So the Gulf countries also have been looking for secure partners so that they can sell their oil and gas. And India has emerged as a major importer of oil and gas. Along with this, the relationship between India and West Asian country is linked with other issues which are connected with energy, and that is the trade. We have deficit trade with all of these oil importing countries. We buy more through oil from Saudi Arabia, but our exports are less. So we pay more in foreign exchange to Saudi Arabia, to Kuwait, to Iraq, to UAE and other countries. So in that way, we need to export to these countries so that we have foreign exchange. Then related to this also is the investments. These countries, oil-rich countries, have surplus dollars, surplus foreign currency, which they are looking for investment. And India is a major destination for investments. Along with this, you have the Indian workers also, whose number is growing since 1973. Now it is nearly 9 million workers in the GCC countries alone. So if you put together all of these issues, there is a very strong bond between India and the West Asian countries, especially the Gulf countries, with whom we have long historical ties. They share the culture, the cuisine, the various aspects in their individual societal life for a long period. When they did not have oil, they were dependent on trade with India. And, it is the fact well known that the maturity of ties is reflected in the strong bond which India has with many of these countries. So the recent incident, I would see that as a storm and passing cloud. And as you can witness, immediately the Iranian foreign minister came to India and met with the foreign minister and the prime minister, which goes to show that Iran, being an important regional power in the Gulf region, views this as a passing incident, which of course has to be addressed. I'll come to that in the end. But it shows how important ties are for Iran with India, just as Indian diplomacy became active to repair the damage done in the recent past by taking numerous steps. You see, the issue of importing of oil and gas from this region is a compulsion for us, because of our developmental needs, because of lack of our own domestic sources of oil and gas. But we have been trying to explore oil and gas from many partners in this region. You must have heard about the idea of importing of Iranian gas for over 25 years, the Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline, which was supposed to take shape. But due to various reasons, including the American sanctions on Iran and the conflictual relations between India and Pakistan and the security situation in Balochistan and various other issues have dodged this pipeline, and we are yet to see the light of the day. Similar is the fate of the TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, because Turkmenistan is one of the major oil and gas producing country particularly, and India has been working to bring Turkmen gas through Afghanistan to India. But as you know, the turmoil in Afghanistan has affected this pipeline project. Although efforts are being made, but it is unlikely that we would get in the near future either the Turkmen gas or the Iranian gas or even the Bangladeshi gas or the Myanmar gas for various geopolitical reasons and also the global powers intervention in one way or the other. Now there are attempts to build a pipeline between Iran and Oman so that Iranian gas can be exported to Oman, and from there Oman becomes a major exporter of Iranian gas to the world. Hopefully we may also get gas through Oman, Iranian gas through Oman. See, all of these factors are relevant, but the utter dependency in which we have landed ourselves also indicates that we need to redouble our efforts to work for the renewables. You know, we have been talking for the last 25 plus years. We have a ministry in charge of these renewables, but the progress has not been really satisfactory. We talk about nuclear energy, we talk about solar energy, we talk about thermal energy, hydropower, electricity, so on and so forth. So in that way, we need to redouble our efforts. You know, a small country like Norway, you know, where 50% of the cars are now electric cars, or Sweden or Finland. So in that way, the innovation and the technology needed, we need to redouble the investments and see to it that the renewables are taking shape in a concrete manner. Although the demand is huge for a country of continental size of India, but it is important that we give sufficient funds for the renewables and other aspects which would not make us vulnerable to some of the issues involved in the Gulf region, because we have had several oil shocks from this region because of domestic turmoil there, revolutions, wars, instability, foreign intervention, coups, so on and so forth. From 73 to the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, the Kuwait crisis, sanctions on Iraq, and various other issues have affected supplies from oil supplies, raised eyebrows or raised prices, and of course our own developmental efforts also have been affected because of the instability there. So overall, what is important is taking a lesson from the recent crisis involving the BJP spokesman with Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and a host of countries both in West Asia and in Southeast Asia. We need to be very careful in pursuing policies which would damage, affect, because all of these countries are Islamic countries. Islamic people are sensitive, and Islamic groups are very active in these countries. So situation may go out of hand for these rulers also, because of the large number of Indians there. We have heard about the boycott of Indian products in Kuwait or workers of a particular community. like we had during the Babri Masjid in the early 90s issue. So these situations need to be avoided. We need to follow an inclusive policy domestically without showing favor or discrimination to one community or the other, because the whole world is watching India as a successful democracy, as an emerging economy, as a aspirant aspiring global power to become a member of the UN Security Council, or an important player in the BRICS or non-aligned movement, or as a nuclear power, how responsible we are. So for all of these things, we need to pursue secure, sound domestic policies, inclusive policy, and rule of law, respect for all the religions and communities. When electoral politics takes an upper hand and one-upmanship takes precedence, these kind of incidents go out of hand and they cause potential damage to the country's relations. And West Asia being a very important component, because if you put all the Islamic countries of 57 members of the OIC, that bloc constitutes the largest trading bloc. More than 150 billion of India's trade would be with this bloc of OIC countries. So we cannot afford to antagonize or alienate ourselves from the Islamic world, especially the Gulf countries, which are very important from all points of view. I would stop here and see what are the issues which need to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable and insightful views on India and West Asia relations. It's indeed, as I told earlier, it's very important for India to balance and also to continue the good relations with the West Asian countries, where it is all more majority of the Indian energy. It's relied on GCC countries. So in this regard, I want to request Dr. Binod. Dr. Binod, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. It was very enlightening to listen to viewpoints of Professor A.K.Pasha finally, and before that, Ambassador Anil. I didn't find any disagreement between two of them, but Professor Pasha did reminded us that it's a very delicate situation and India has to maintain a peaceful and stable, extended relationship with the extended neighborhood, that is GCC, a huge trading bloc with India. But since we live in a global community where India's geographical location is very important, whether we look towards east or towards west, I'm not very clear that in this Russia-Ukraine war, the Gulf countries are a real winner or losers. In terms of this energy business or overall politics, because there are no comments from their side. They're not choosing any side. There's no any debate. There's a lot of pressure on India to choose a side. But these Afro-Asian other countries here, they're basically, are they going with Russia, or they're just maintaining the old enough, neutral, non-aligned stand? And I have listened to some of the comments of Professor Anil Trigunayat that maybe it's another chance for India to lead, NAM 2.0, something like we don't choose a side and we again emerge as a leader of these countries, which are not going to choose a side in any geopolitical war. So this was a point where I wanted Anil sir to just, because we are not sure that we'll repeat NAM 2.0. But sir, your experience, what do you say?
Thank you, Dr. Binod. The thing is, the world is really shifting gears at this moment, especially after the Russia-US war. I do not call it Russia-Ukraine war. It is between Russia and USA. This is a war which has changed the whole gamut how the wars are fought. Here, you are seeing a weaponization of the financial instruments of the West against Russia, which is the most I would say, sanctioned country in the world today. This is the first time that you are seeing that a country's foreign exchange reserves of $630 billion are confiscated. What does it say? I mean, there are umpteen number of sanctions and all. Russia cannot be dished away because it is the largest country in the world. It is the richest country in the world. And so even if they want to, it is difficult to completely sideline them. That's not possible. So what are they looking at? They are looking at totally subjugating it. And in order to counter that, what is Russia looking at? Russia is looking at an alternate mechanism, whether it is financial architecture with China, with certain other countries. And US is trying very hard to keep its flock together in the West, which is unlikely. If war continues for 3 more months, it'll be very difficult for Americans to keep the European allies together, because in those democracies, you will have major problems at the grassroots level. You must be reading that just in a few months' time, UK has the lowest ever standard of living in the history after the Second World War. All these countries, including the US, are having the highest ever inflation.
Yes.
So those people cannot. So in this situation, what are we looking at? We are looking at the world getting divided into 2 blocks, like it happened post Second World War. It is Cold War 2.0, you may call it, or Hot War 2.0, whatever it is. But given the way the things are today, this is where it is heading. And this will be a different kind of, it will not be political alone. Earlier one was more political, ideological. But this one is going to be far more economic centered, because China is the behemoth and the dragon in the world, which they want to contain. Very difficult to do so also. So the West is to some extent confused, but it is giving way. Now in that situation, what happens to countries like India? I mean, you have forever, when you were very weak after the independence, then you chose a path that we will take views. We are not neutral, but we will take an opinion on the basis of the merits of the particular case, and which should be in our own interest. That's precisely what we are looking at. So today, when we are members of the Quad, we are also continuing to be the members of the BRICS, and we chair. Last year, we chaired the BRICS. We are the members of the RIC. We are also the members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization with China. But while we are going ahead with the new economic quad, or for that matter, the whatever the Americans have launched, IPEF and other things. So we have a global comprehensive strategic partnership with the Americans. At the same time, we have a special and privileged partnership with the Russians. Our problem is China. And when it comes to China, then obviously India will have to. So we cannot take sides just like that. And we are far too big for that. And that's when Dr. Jaishankar says that we have to look at our own interests. We can think ourselves what we want. So that's why when I say that this is the right time, because at this time, Africa, large part of Asia, large part of Latin America want the same thing which India wants, strategic autonomy. They don't want to be living under any hegemony. So that's why I always say that we could try now. This will be the right time in a few months' time for us to look at some kind of a grouping called Nations for Strategic Autonomy. And that's what I meant. So time has to come, because you are the 3rd largest economy. You're going to be the largest population in the world. You are the largest democracy, irrespective of whatever weaknesses we have. But nobody can deny that. So when we have all that, then we need to work on it. You are a nuclear power, you are a space power. I mean, what do you need?
Master Sir, since I lived in China for more than a decade and I was a teacher there, sir, on the public platform, India is well respected and well, deserved. But sir, in the chat rooms, in the social media chat rooms, or in the behind, when so you yourself speaks many languages, I also understand Mandarin. So it's very hard, we lose the self-respect of India, the words they use for India in the chat rooms on any issue, on global issue. That in China, they call us kind of a third party, not siding with any party in the history, even now. So Americans, again, they're not saying anything directly, but in their chat rooms, they're using all the bad words. Sometimes the Biden is calling us shaky, So my question to you, sir, as a diplomat, as a student, foreign students in different countries, how do we maintain our self-respect of India?
You cannot maintain your self-respect by subjugating yourself to the Americans or to the Chinese. It's not possible. I mean, do you think we'll do ourselves a service if we became a part of the US-led bloc? Will you have greater respect at the time? Americans use you like a plastic and throw it away. As simple as that. Every other country for them is a part of the chess game. You are a rook, not even a queen or any major, So you cannot, how you can leverage yourself? The idea is you can leverage yourself because you have the market. That's what I tell even the oil producing countries. If you produce oil, you can't drink it. You got to sell it. Who's going to buy it? Yes. Americans, if they make weapons, they have to sell it. Russia, if it makes weapons. So we are the buyers. We need to dictate the terms. And that's why I say we should also try to create some kind of oil importing and consuming countries cartel like the OPEC. Why not? Have those kind of things. So when you are when you are not aligned with any country in an alliance format, then you can dictate the terms. And even in the Russia-Ukraine war, I believe firmly that we have taken a principled stand. It is not a stand for Russia or against America. It is a principled stand which now everybody is beginning to understand. And that's why you have more respect from 100. I mean, I would not be, this is not a place to say that, but I tell you for the first time in the history of India's engagement, Yoga Day, we talk it as very lightly, you may be taking it, but 177 countries, including all Muslim countries, supported the Yoga Day. That is your strength. That's your power. China will always berate you. Americans will always berate you. And there is a theory that this, whatever happened in the reaction that came from the Middle East this time was more possibly also nudged by the Americans.
Yes, sir.
Because of our stand. So there has been a theory like that. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I believe that if we have done the wrong thing, we need to have the courage to accept it. And we have done that. So I think that in that sense, I am a firm believer. I may be wrong totally, but I think that we need to find our own feet.
So it was very helpful. Thank you. Ma'am, can you ask the questions in the chat box?
Yeah, let me weigh in just briefly on this issue. You see, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, I see it as an important landmark in global politics. And my own impression is that, you see, this is a pointer to an emerging multipolar world. And India is a major player, is going to be a major player in the emerging world order comprising of China, Japan, India, the BRIC countries of South Africa, Brazil, including Iran, Turkey, and plus the old order of European Union and the United States and the Canadians and Australians. So in that way, you see, if you see the West Asian countries, particularly the oil and gas countries, they were under tremendous pressure from the United States and the European Union to increase the oil production, the gas production. What we are seeing in Europe, very high energy cost, oil and gas, is because of the sanctions they have slapped on Russia. And they expected the Arab and other countries to come to their rescue, but they have refused. Saudi Arabia refused to increase the oil production. Qatar refused to increase the gas production. So is the case with other countries. So in that way, even those countries which are allies or dependent on the United States, they are not willing to toe the American line. The utter dependence of Saudi Arabia and UAE and Bahrain and other GCC countries on America for security. But they have now mustered courage to say no on the core issue because they see what Russia is doing is in their long-term interest. They don't want the pressure on Russia to succeed because it may happen on their own countries, like it is being happening in the case of Iran. So in that way, India's position on the Ukraine crisis, I think is a clear pointer, is a message not only to China, to Russia, but also to the European Union and the United States that, look, India is going to be a major player. It will decide not because it is a member of Quad or because it is a democracy and it should share the democratic values with the Europeans. but because of our long-term interest. So in that way, we are nudging slowly towards an order where we will have sufficiently strong place to argue for. We have been knocking the doors of the 5 permanent members for a seat in the UN Security Council. The United States has promised umpteen number of times, Britain, France, all the other countries. But when it comes to actual reforms in the UN, they slide back. They don't want India to have a veto wielding power. They say, we will accommodate you as non-veto wielding power. We don't want that kind of a situation. So in that way, the global economic situation also is revolving towards a situation where the dictates of the West, particularly led by the United States, is not so much a factor now. You know, most of the writings, in the social media, you might come across sarcastic remarks from the United States or the Europeans, but it shows their utter frustration. They are frustrated that India is able to say no to them. They expected us to toe the line because they thought that we are dependent on them because of China, because of various other factors. But no, we are capable of saying no to them, and we know the actual situation, what is happening in the United States. Way back in 95 or 98, one of our prime minister, in a press conference in Egypt, had referred to the United Kingdom as not even a 10th rate power 25 years ago. So as Ambassador Anil pointed out, the standard of living in UK has come down, and it is coming down because of their own stupid policies. They want to dictate terms and dominate the world. They are refusing to accept other centers of power, whether it is China or India or Turkey or Iran or Nigeria or Brazil or South Africa. These are the new voices which are emerging, and India is taking the lead in this situation. And I think you should ignore all these chat room insinuations and tell them boldly and frankly and categorically that, look, no matter what you say, it reflects your frustration and your inability to put your own house in order. I think there is no need for despondency.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your incredible discussion, sir. It is really, indeed, it is required for us. And we should have positive thinkings regarding the relations between India and West Asia. In connection with this, sir, recently, West Asian countries and Russia, they are regularly imposing sanctions on each other. Sir, as for me, will it impact on India's relations with West Asia, sir, in future?
No, who is imposing sanctions? I don't think Russia is imposing sanctions on West Asia. It is the Americans who are imposing the sanctions on Russia and on Iran and other West Asian countries like Sudan, Libya, Syria, Yemen. On every other country, they impose sanctions. And that is affecting our diplomacy also in one way or the other.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And once again, with having hopes to improve the relations and to resolve all the tensions in between India and West Asia, to hope for better relations. Sir, with this, I will continue the discussion, sir, with our students. Some of our students are very eager to know more information regarding the India and West Asia and India's energy security, sir. Now I will call Alok to ask the question, sir. He is having a question, sir. He is studying in the final year, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your immense knowledge. Sir, my question is, do Indians enjoy human rights while working and living in West Asia?
Yes, of course. They have their human rights. Otherwise, if the rights were not respected, why would they go in large numbers there and work? That is the basic point. You see, human dignity is very important for any individual. You know, Indians, of course, labor class has been going there. Blue collar workers have been going there for the last 40 years plus. But there are cases where, you know, especially maid servants and construction workers, you know, have not got adequate accommodation, or their passports are seized, or they are made to work unduly for long hours. You know, this applies to other countries' immigrant labor also. It is not special to Indian workers. You know, workers from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, from Philippines, Bangladesh also face a similar situation. But Indian embassies, Indian government leaders have been from time to time intervening in this situation. And wherever there is a sign of violation of their rights, especially the right to contract, their salaries, and various other issues, we have taken strict action. And I think by and large, it has been to the satisfaction of both the countries. You know, international groups, NGOs try to rake up this issue, whether it is in Qatar or in Kuwait, so on and so forth. There are cases of violation of human rights, individual cases, but that should not be generalized. You know, if you see the number of Indian workers, it has been steadily rising since 73. You know, it is not just 100, 200, 3,000, but hundreds and thousands, almost 85 lakh Indian workers are gainfully employed. They hold lucrative posts. Billions of dollars are paid as salaries to them, and they support almost 50 million Indian workers, Indians in India. This 9 million, nearly 9 million support their fathers, their mothers, their children, their grandfathers and grandmothers, and in a big way, in more than 16 countries, from Kerala to Tamil Nadu to Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Bihar, UP, you know, West Bengal. All of these hosts have sent workers to the GCC countries, and they send back their salaries. Almost a major part of it. Very few have taken their families to stay with them because the requirement there is very high. So in that way, bulk of the salaries earned by the Indian workers, they are sent back, and it fuels the economic development here. The worker, if he sends even 2 lakhs in a month, it helps the families, the children's education, you know, and economic living, whether they buy the house or property or investment or travel or education. All this money comes back into our economy. So if he were not happy there, or if his human rights were violated, he would not stay. It is as simple as that. Human dignity is more important. Some amount of restriction on the freedom is accepted, including in India. The Supreme Court imposes certain reasonable restrictions on the fundamental rights. It is not, you know, absolute. So in that way, there are issues, but these are far and few in the overall context.
I'll just add a small thing for your information is that with all these countries, we have regular institutional mechanisms. Agreements are signed, and every time there is an effort is made that wherever there is a problem for somebody, there are insurance packages for them so that they don't suffer. If their jobs are immediately taken out, they're not paid salaries. So every year, I think we have tremendous changes that are taking place in improving the conditions of our people. One small thing I want to tell you in Qatar, for example, during the pandemic, In India, that may not be so, but there, Indians are roughly about 3 times of the Qatari population. And when it came to vaccination, there was no distinction whether you are an Indian or you are a Pakistani or you are a Qatari. So everybody was given the same Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. That shows that they are taking full care. And if you are suffering from this, then immediately they were provided the same kind of assistance.
Yeah, I totally agree with the ambassador. In fact, we have signed agreements with most of the GCC countries for issues to be resolved in the courts. And they have agreed the local courts take up expeditiously all the cases related to non-payment of salaries or sacking of the workers or violation of the contract, so on and so forth. Of course, there are some exceptions which applies to all the immigrant population.
Thank you.
But don't go by the TV and press comments which try to exaggerate 1 or 2 stray cases here and there. You have to be very careful not to be carried away by, including the Indian news channels, which tend to exaggerate beyond proportion.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your kind answers to our student. Sir, we have questions in the chat box, sir.
There is one on Iran. I'll just tell you, it's an interesting question. Well, you know that when the Americans put the sanctions earlier, there were certain waivers that were granted to India. Even during the Trump time, we got certain waiver, but then they told us that they are not going to allow, but they will arrange the replacement of the oil from there. And eventually, because of several Indian companies, it was not because of the government. The Indian companies who are importing the oil, they decided that they will rather not import because they will have sanctions across the world, because still today the financial system is totally controlled by the Americans. We had the Iranian foreign minister, and I understand that there have been discussions on this once again. He told us what is happening on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is called the Iran nuclear deal with the US and all. And the hopes are that this deal will be signed in some time, and then we'll be importing from the oil. We are ready to do that. India has been working on it for quite some time now, actually, to as soon as possible to import the Iranian oil, because we have certain refineries which are actually made for those. So this is how I look at it today. And the other one was how internal politics of India influences the India foreign relations specific for security, energy. Well, as we had told, both Professor Pasha and I spoke about this. This is something which should not happen, as simple as that. The state-to-state political problems can be resolved, but the problem which impact at the grassroots level, the people, that is something which is a bit difficult, because perceptions then are made. This time we have been able to manage it, but if we continue to have those kind of problems, they will impact on our Indian people who are living there in those countries. Professor Pasha?
Yes, just 1 or 2 short points. You see, on Iran, my take is that, you see, we have unnecessarily come under the influence or pressure from the United States, like China and Russia and Turkey and other countries. You know, we should have told the Americans that, you know, for our energy security, Iran is extremely important, and we should have continued to import oil and gas, even if it were in a limited quantity, to show that the importance of Iran in our energy mix. So I think even now, when if the JCPOA is signed, we need to make it very clear that, you know, of course, the GCC countries are important, but to balance them, we need to have a robust energy relationship with Iran in the long term, because Iran has huge reserves of gas and also oil, which are important for our energy security. In that way, we can have a balanced relationship with the West Asian countries. Regarding the other issue, you see, as I pointed out, the BJP government should realize that, you know, the inclusive policy is extremely important because as all the BJP leaders and others point out, India has the second or third largest Muslim population. And any mistreatment or statement towards them would impact the Muslim masses in the Islamic countries. Because except Israel, all the countries in West Asia have large Muslim population and some are Islamic countries or Islamic republics. So in that way, for the last 8 years, what was happening because of electoral politics or Hindutva politics or whatever, these kind of issues are not merely confined within the borders of India. Through the news channels, through social media, through electronic media, print media, this is read and watched in the Islamic countries also very carefully, especially where you have large Indian population there. So any incitement through the TV channels or the media or press would naturally impact the population because, in West Asia, you have various Islamic movements emerging from time to time. Right from the rise of Islam, you have several extreme movements within Islam, which are more conservative, orthodox, emerging, whether it is Wahhabism or Salafism or Ikhwan al-Muslimin or Islamic State, and in numerous groups which are bent upon going back to the period of Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago. They see all these policies by the present rulers as aberrations and deviations from the pristine Islamic policy they should follow, and including the Islamic Revolution in Iran. It is a fact of life. Nobody can deny for the last 4 decades or so. So in that way, the Islamic groups are very active there. Like you have the Hindu groups there, which also feel emboldened because of the rise of BJP. So in that way, one should be cautious what we do, because it will impact not only bilateral relations, but also our economic relations. So in that way, respect to the constitution, respect to the rule of law and democratic principles in India would showcase that we are a progressive democracy. That includes all the people, whether Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Sikh, or whatever, which is what we aspire to do through the constitution and various measures which we have taken since independence. So in that way, an inclusive policy, respect for rule of law and respect to all minorities and their belief system without attempts to isolate and denigrate them, is very important in that context.
So thank you, sir, for your insightful and concern about India and about your worry also, sir. I hope it will not, whatever the tensions are going on, it will not impact on India's relations with West Asian countries, sir. It will not remain for a long time. And with this, sir, one of my students is also waiting eagerly to ask a question, sir. He is having a question, sir. Mr. Batu?
Good evening, sir. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your valuable knowledge with us. This is Batur Arsalan from Afghanistan, a student at Department of International Relations, Maharaja's College, University of Mysore. Sir, what is the importance and benefit of Tapi gas pipeline project for India, which is also key priority of India and Turkmenistan as well? And what is Indian government strategy for future to meet energy security?
You see, we are looking for gas from every available source. And as I pointed out in my presentation, Turkmenistan has huge gas reserves. They are exporting gas to many countries, including China. And we have signed agreements, we have been working, but the main issue is stability in your country. Your leaders should work for peace, security, stability, and follow an inclusive policy. Why no country has recognized the Taliban government? Because what they pursue is not acceptable to your neighbors, your own friends. whether it is China or Pakistan or Turkey or Russia or any other country. So the Taliban have to see why the world is boycotting them, why it doesn't want to have diplomatic relations. So stability in Afghanistan is extremely important because the pipeline has to go through large areas of Afghanistan. It will benefit Afghanistan. Afghanistan also would get gas from Turkmenistan, which it can use for generating electricity, for industrial purposes, so on and so forth. But bulk of it will be used in India and Pakistan. So in that way, the prosperity of all of these four countries is linked to what the Taliban leaders do. The whole world has been trying to tell them that, look, you need to open your eyes, you need to give freedom to women, you need to provide stability, you need to follow a policy which is acceptable not only to your people, but to your neighbors and to the whole world. You know, we cannot live in an isolated world. We cannot live in the cages, Tora Bora caves, as the Taliban leadership used to live there. You know, they have to look for the aspiration of the people like you, young people who want better education, better jobs in the Afghan economy, so on and so forth. You want to go back to Afghanistan and teach or work or develop your country. So for that, you need a policy, broad-based policy, which is inclusive and helpful, so that your country gets the necessary technical input, financial input, support, and cooperation, which is extremely important. And in that context, Tapi gas would be a major factor which will provide stability and economic development for all of these countries.
Thank you, sir, for your fruitful and discussion, sir. I hope students are enlightening. And sir, it is too much, sir. We are taking a lot of time. But one more question, sir. Lastly, Chandan is a first-year student. He is also eagerly waiting to get to know more answers from you, sir. Chandan?
So good evening, sir. Sir, India is now making deals with Russia for oil imports, but Russia has the largest natural gas reserves also in the world. What's the possibility of India importing gas from Russia, sir?
Well, we have
sorry, Ambassador Anil, please go ahead.
No, we have received certain consignments of oil and gas from Russia, but what is happening is you need pipelines. So those are the things or LNG in that format. So what happens to the oil? Oil can be supplied through exchanges, like what we have invested a great deal in Russian oil fields. So whatever oil we get from there, that is traded, and that is we buy here, and then it is in exchange for that. But for the gas, it has to be either LNG or the pipe gas. So there are discussions going on that field, exactly how it can work out.
Getting gas through the tankers is expensive because the LNG conversion of liquefied natural gas in bringing through huge tankers is an expensive proposition. You must have terminals, and the Russians also should have the technology in their ports in the eastern part. But bulk of their gas is committed to Europe. And I'm not very sure if on a long-term basis like Qatar, they would be willing to sign agreements with India. We would be very much looking for gas, but we have other areas. I think Israel also is emerging as one of the important players in the gas field in the coming years. And once sanctions are removed on Iran, hopefully Iranian gas also, if the technology of LNG is available, we hope to get from the nearest port, because from Chabahar or Bandar Abbas or any other terminal from Iran, to Dobal in Gujarat, that is the nearest point through which the LNG tankers can come, apart from Qatar, on which we have become dependent, and we saw the nasty situation over the last 2 weeks. So in that way, if we have more opportunity, whether it is Turkmen gas or Iranian gas or Russian gas or other sources, we can avoid this kind of a situation in future. So in that way, we need to work to reduce the tensions and bring quietly the peace and security and bilateral relationship. We should play our own role in the nuclear deal also behind the scene.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you for both of you, sir. You made us to feel as we are in the classroom, sir. Pasha, sir, thank you, sir. Now given a wonderful discussion, wonderful explanation, information for us, sir. And with this, sir, I would like to say, sir, India is required to put more effort to become a self-reliant in coming days, sir. And also, it should think about the relations, how it can maintain the balanced relations with West Asian countries, because it's very important for India. And also, without entering into any other organization, and it should have its own stand in this global world or in this challenging world order, sir. And sir, we also have a formal procedure to give a vote of thanks, sir. I request one of my students, Saheli, to offer a vote of thanks, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good evening to all. It's my pleasure to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of my department. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Professor K.S.Rangappa, sir, former Vice Chancellor of University of Mysore and Karnataka State Open University, for his special presence. Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging opening remarks. I would also like to thank Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, sir, former Ambassador of India to Libya and Distinguished Fellow in Vivekananda International Foundation, for sharing his knowledge with us. We are extremely happy to hear your views on India's energy security in West Asia. I am happy to extend my sincere thanks to Professor K.S.Pasha, Director of CIR-India, ex-Associate Dean, Director and Chairman of School of International Studies, JNU, for gracing this event. So we are really privileged that we got the chance to hear your vision. Thank you so much for joining us. A special thanks to Dr.Appaji Gowda, sir, for his special presence. We are really lucky that despite of the busy schedule, all the speakers found the time to grace this event. I also extend my heartfelt thanks to Mysore Global Forum for giving us this opportunity. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the faculty members of our department, dignitaries, students, scholars who have joined this seminar, the people who work behind the screen, and the students of IR department for making this event a successful one. Before ending, I would like to inform you that a recorded version of this seminar will be available in our YouTube channel. And also, I'm glad to announce that next week we have another panel discussion on the topic of India's cultural diplomacy in the digital world. Once again, thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, we look forward to get you, again, and also keep posted your Twitter and YouTube channels. We really want to follow you. And your viewers giving us self-confidence, no doubt. But sir, Professor Pasha, being a student JNU, give me 1 minute. I really feel that when I went to Gulf countries and China, I believe that those people who have lived in Indian democracy, it's little hard for them to survive in those autocracies. Professor Pasha, that's what my personal experience was. They have their own standard and their rule of law. But once you have lived in India, where you're allowed to speak your mind and debate, unending in the JNU Ganga Dhaba, then you go to China or go to Russia, even, and go to other countries, you have very difficult time. So
yes, there is a choice. You can continue to go to Ganga Dhaba. Don't go to Gulf countries and China. Stay back and enjoy the chai or meal at the Ganga Dhaba. Enjoy the democracy. Forget about the money making.
Sir, always, sir, thank you, sir, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat.
Thank you.
Professor Pasha, sir, always has been motivating for us, especially for me, and making our discussions so fruitful. I hope all the students and those who gathered here and virtually, they are benefited. And especially while talking about Professor Pasha, always he will be advising me. And he is the former founder, chairperson of our department, sir, board of study. Sir, Anil, sir, You are most welcome to Mysore, sir. Pasha
you,
sir
ma'am.
is there. Always sir is guiding me. Because of him, I could able to bring all these discussions. Today, whatever we are, that credit goes to Professor Pasha sir. Once again, warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye,
Thank you for
Professor.
all your efforts.
See you soon.